Well, hello once again all my YouTube viewers, and thanks once more for your continuing support as we head towards the 9,000 subscriber total. Now I hope you're continuing to enjoy my content, and hopefully it will help a little towards keeping up your interest in these old classic race bikes while everything is currently still on lockdown. Now in this next featured video we're going to browse over another British classic which has just been recently rebuilt, so I hope you'll just stay with me for the next few minutes as we take a look at Alistair Aird's 500 BSA. Now this is Alistair Aird's bike that I spotted at a Scottish Classic Scramble event a few years back, and these featured shots were taken not long after Alastair had just finished a full rebuild on the bike. Now Alastair had originally purchased this bike from a previous owner who had initially done a lot of the early work on the machine. Now when Alastair first bought the bike, it wasn't of course blue, but this very nice maroon red colour, and even at this stage it was still a very nice looking machine. Although since buying the bike, Alastair naturally has put his own personal touch on this bike and completely changed the overall colour. But essentially the bike is made up from a BSA B25 frame, although the nickel plated swing arm is a bespoke special item made by engineer Terry Weedy, who makes all manner of parts for these classic BSAs and other vintage motorcycles. Now if you're thinking that the name Aird sounds quite familiar, well that's probably because Alastair is related to the CCM rider and general motocross legend Jimmy Aird. Now Alastair also knows his way around these classic BSA motorcycles, so when it comes to building or repairing these bikes, Alastair has a wealth of knowledge to dispense if you need advice or information on these British classics. Now the BSA engine is a BSA B44 motor, although rather than the normal semi-square featured barrel, the cooling fins on this engine have been machined around. Now for what reason I'm not entirely sure, but the engine builder I'm sure will know what advantages it has to make them round rather than square. Now inside the motor it has a Carrillo conrod, which is a very popular fitment on these old BSA and even some CCM motors, and the motor has your standard 4-speed gearbox with the normal wet multi-plate clutch. Now don't ask me why this gear shifter has this obscure bend in it, as Alastair told me he doesn't know either, as it was fitted to the bike when he bought it, but it still works okay, so Alastair just left it on. Now the top and bottom triple clamps are Italian made Serianis, as of course is both front suspension units, which are mated to these Gramica front and rear brake hubs. Now alloy wheels are also used on this bike in both the front and rear of the machine. Now Alastair has also fitted a pair of these very good quality rock shocks to his BSA. Now these are a good upgrade on these classic bikes, and they're of course also made right here in the UK. Now in this shot we have a better view of that Terry Weedy made swing arm, which of course is nickel plated. Now that very heavy duty chain guide and brake anchor assembly Alastair told me was originally made to fit onto a Bultaco, but fitted onto his old BSA he says it works well and it does its job superbly. Now as I mentioned earlier, both the front and the rear hubs here are Gramica hubs, and these of course have been laced to these brand new alloy wheels. Now the bike's side panels are a pair of custom made alloy parts, and the change of colour scheme from the bike's original red to the blue motif was actually done by another of Alistair's kin, Brian, who is a spray painter to trade, so Alistair has been making very good use of his family connections. But for me personally, I quite like this blue as opposed to the original red, but that's the thing with these old classic bikes, you don't have to put them back to their original specifications each time you do a rebuild. But the finished bike certainly looks the goods, and it just feels like this bike is just ready to go racing. Now this very nice fuel tank is not taken from any other make of old BSA. This tank was actually another custom made part in alloy, which was made by the previous owner of this machine. Now, as you know, the tank was originally red, but this was then repainted in blue by our intrepid spray painter Brian Aird. Now the exhaust pipe on this machine is your run-of-the-mill standard B50 straight through pipe, although the attached tail section was another part that was handmade by the previous owner before Alastair took delivery of the bike. Now, since Alastair has owned and finished building the bike, he's not had many opportunities to ride it due to a few ongoing health issues, although the bike still gets raced regularly as a backup machine by family member Brian Aird, who also races a similar BSA in the pre-1968 class. But Alastair told me he's quite happy to loan his bike out to other riders if they have mechanical issues with their particular machines on the day, because he says the bike was built to race, and Alastair gets just as much enjoyment seeing someone else put the bike through its paces as he would have done had he been riding it himself. Now the bike seat went through a full rebuild as well, using the original alloy seat base, and a new foam was added, and of course a new seat cover to finish it off. Now also there was a new oil tank added to this bike, which was tucked up very neatly underneath the rider's seat. But the combination of this superb BSA motor and its chassis with that lovely unique nickel plated swing arm make this a very competitive machine on the racetrack. But nevertheless, you have to admit that this is still a nice old BSA race bike. Of course, originally it was a decent bike when Alastair bought it. It's just that Alastair has personalised it by changing the colour and adding his own bits and pieces to suit his own individual requirements. But mind you, if it's a rider he needs for his BSA, then surely there would be only one choice, and that's his fellow racing family member and all-round BSA and CCM legend Jimmy Aird. Now, because Jimmy still races his CCMs and occasionally BSAs, surely he would be the one to put this bike through its paces and see what it can do. But of course, Alastair, that's just my suggestion. So there you have it, another very nice looking classic old dirt bike. That's Alistair Aird's vintage BSA. Now once again, thank you for your support of my channel as we head towards the 9,000 subscribers total, but please stay tuned to see more of these old vintage two-wheelers when we speak once more right here on Classic Dirt Bike TV. This video was brought to you in association with VMX Magazine, your #1 publication for classic, vintage and off-road motorcycles. Just visit their online website for more information.